are extracting the fossilized remains of a Centrosaurus.
The last time this animal was exposed to air was around 76 million years ago. He's one of many buried in these hills. In the late Cretaceous, this region was a swampy, tropical coastal plain. Millions of ancient organisms lived, died, and occasionally became trapped in the sediment. Since then, glaciers carved away much of that sedimentary rock, creating the aptly named Dinosaur Provincial Park. It's debatably the best site on the planet for finding dinosaur bones. Over 500 species of prehistoric life have been discovered here, more than any other single place on Earth.
I'm not a real paleontologist, I'm just spending the weekend living out some childhood dreams.
Dustin, what's that thing? Oh.
And when we get the Centrosaurus out of the ground, we don't get to keep it.
Now, this probably isn't groundbreaking information for you. This is a provincial park after all. But if I find a fossil anywhere in Alberta, it is illegal for me to excavate, disturb, deface, destroy, collect, own, sell, or export that fossil in any way. The only fossils you can legally collect in the province are the most common ones, and they have to be found on the surface, outside of a park. Even then, you can take it home, but you still don't own it. You're just holding it in trust for the people of Alberta. Yet, if I get in my truck and drive to Drumheller, the self-proclaimed dinosaur capital of the world, I can find plenty of shops selling fossils as souvenirs. Some of them for exorbitant prices. What the hell's going on? The short answer is that most of those fossils came from Montana or other localities where it's legal to make a profit off of fossils. The long answer is a bit more complicated.
My name is Ben Borkovic. I've been working in paleontology in Alberta for the past 10 years. Paleontology seems to occupy like a pretty unique area in the public psyche, where it's both this like magical field of mystery where people are interested to learn about creatures of a bygone era of incomprehensible size, but it's also a very detailed science where with meticulous work that's been done for decades to build up our scientific understanding. It's a bit of a double-edged sword where there's a lot of material that you see on the screen showing dinosaurs to the public and engaging with kids or adults. There's a fine line in there where we don't want the science to also be belittled for entertainment. Bringing kids into the science through entertainment is just fine, but you hope that maybe as the material ramps up for an older audience that the science can be included more thoroughly.
But consumers want them bigger, louder, more teeth.
Alberta has some of the strongest fossil laws, which I think is quite good, especially given the abundance of fossils we have here. So in general, across the board in Alberta, you are not allowed to excavate a fossil without a scientific permit. So if you see something that's in the ground, it needs to stay in the ground. And the best thing that can be done is to take a photograph and GPS coordinates or detailed description of where you found it, and to send that to a museum such as the Royal Material Museum of Paleontology. If you find fossils for sale in fossil shops, usually they have come from other jurisdictions. Often you'll see things like shark's teeth from California or Oregon. You might find trilobites from Morocco. Fossils from around the world have made their way into fossil shops where they're sold. Eliminating the dollar value aspect of fossils in the province has really helped to make sure that the specimens of interest are able to be studied by the scientific community. And it keeps a lot of the sort of the wonder and the awe that we find in discovering these fossils when a member of the public can go out and hope to see fossils in the ground in Alberta.
What do you see? What do you see, Justin?
What'd you find?
That tooth.
A tooth?
It's a shark.
Cool.
Cool.
A shark tooth. We can share the fossils. Hey, just shark tooth
keep
I
looking.
found.
So I'm just editing right now, and I feel the need to clarify that my parents bought that fossil in Drumheller and then planted it for my 4-year-old benefit. They're not criminals.
And if people were able to just simply take them as quickly as they like, or try to sell them for a quick dollar or something, it would really eliminate that ability to engage with our science and the history of the province.
So if I dig up a dinosaur here in Alberta, I can't sell it. I can't get rich. But if I cross the border into the United States, where the fossil beds were made in an almost identical manner, I could potentially make millions. It essentially boils down to what is a fossil to us as humans. Is it a public good to be studied and enjoyed by everyone like a coral reef or an archaeological site? Or is it just another natural resource to be commercialized like diamonds or oil? It's an even harder question because it's always kind of been both. In the late 1800s, there was a period of intense competition for fossil finds between two men, Othniel Marsh and Edward Cope. Over the span of a few decades known as the Bone Wars, they discovered over 130 new species in a story full of enough bribery, sabotage, and theft to fill plenty of books and documentaries. The point is, the line between the scientific paleontological community and the commercial one was extremely blurry. But things changed in 1997 in the United States, when after nearly a decade of legal dispute, a nearly perfect Tyrannosaurus rex specimen named Sue sold for a record $8.3 million at the Sotheby's auction house.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sotheby's. We have for auction today the fossil of a Tyrannosaurus rex known as Sue.
The buyers included McDonald's and Disney, who donated it to the Field Museum in Chicago. Sue is still the best T-Rex specimen ever found, and she's become kind of an icon for the Field Museum. She even has her own Twitter page. No bones about it though, once Sue sold, she set a new precedent in the fossil industry. There was money to be made digging fossils.
Dinosaur Whisperer. How do we get people excited about science? It's a question our next guest finds himself asking frequently. Dustin Growick, or Dinosaur Whisperer, as his some 10,000 Instagram followers know him as, is part of a growing movement of educators turning to social media to engage millennials. But whether he's leading museum tours or he's standing in front of a classroom, Growick's message is clear. Dinosaurs are cool, and everyone stands to gain by getting to know Earth's former inhabitants. So first of all, how do we...
I'm Dustin Growick. I've worked in science, broad umbrella of science communication. I guess starting in grad school. And then the pandemic hit and in-person museum experiences weren't really a thing. And I had the opportunity to kind of switch gears. And now I'm literally on the rooftop of Sotheby's. It's basically like I've transitioned now from figuratively selling science and the objects therein to literally selling science and the objects therein. The thing is, I think you have to take everything on a case by case basis. So like one of the benefits of working at Sotheby's is like we're the premier auction house in the world. So we can be very picky. Like we're not just like, oh, we got to sell as much as we can and we'll take anything. But like, so we're very picky on the stuff that we actually will sell. And that means picky in that like what is like a beautiful, amazing, scientifically important specimen, but also like, was this sourced legally? Even like, for instance, you're in Canada, there's pretty stringent like export laws when it comes to fossils and materials out of Canada versus other places in the world. So like, we're only going to work with people that are completely above board, that we know have phenomenally important or phenomenally beautiful or potentially phenomenally valuable specimens. And ideally, from our standpoint, these are people that are also working in the scientific and academic community. So like, for instance, we have one client who puts the money forth to sponsor number of digs, right? And so he puts all the money forth for scientists that do these digs. They dig up whatever they find, they do all the studies, publish papers about them. And then at the end of the day, though, because he was the one who sponsored this, technically the fossils belong to him. So certain numbers of those he will either donate to museums or sell at auction to help recuperate some of that money so that he can continue to fund digs. So again, like I really do think it is a case-by-case basis. Just being like, oh, that belongs in the museum. Like it's a simple, easy thing to say, but like it takes time and money and effort to get those specimens. And many of those end up going to museums. And many of our clients actually are museums that buy pieces to help complete their collection. And so, yeah, it's when you get into these little back and forth, especially like online, there's very little room for nuance. And I can understand the anger with the stereotype of like fossil poachers and just like selling something for however much they can get. But it's never really that cut and dry. And I think I'm in a fortunate position to like learn a lot about that and and make sure that what we are doing is financially and legally sound, scientifically sound, and like we're not doing like bullshit that we shouldn't be doing.
Sue's record price was finally topped in 2020 with the sale of Stan.
This majestic masterpiece, who is 67 million years old, is the king of the dinosaurs and is our final lot for this evening, lot number 59. And where should we start? At $3 million, $3,200,000, $5,500,000, $6 million. Thank you very much. 7.5, Barrett White. $1 million.
9.5 in London, please.
$9,500,000.
10 million, please.
$10 million.
$12 million. 12.5, please.
$12,500,000.
19, please.
19 million. $27,100,000. $27,500,000. Fair warning. I am happy to sell this. James Hislop's bidder for $27,500,000. And sold. Thank you very much.
With the sale of fossils to private owners or in private auctions, it's a concerning trend. It can impact the science of paleontology, and it can impact the future of the field as well. One of the concerns that was sort of established with the sale of Sue, the T-Rex, in the 90s was that if it weren't for corporate support to purchase the specimen, yes, it did end up in a museum, but without corporate support, it wouldn't have been able. The museum would not have been able to afford it, and so that sets a dangerous precedent. And you would hope that the future of a science doesn't sort of rely on corporate backing to allow scientists to be able to access important specimens that are inherently unique. And some people do see that uniqueness as a source of value financially, but the interesting thing is that it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be a financial value. So it is a choice that society makes to allow them to be sold. That uniqueness of paleo is really quite fascinating. That a single specimen can sometimes open up a whole new avenue in a field or in a particular branch of paleontology. And so every specimen is important, and every specimen can have a really significant impact to our scientific understanding of the history of life.
For example, the Notosaur was found in the Albertan oil sands.
It's a major discovery, a brand new species with an adult weight up to 3,000 pounds. They name it Borealopelta. It literally means Shield of the North.
It's one of the best specimens to ever come out of the province. Scientists can see perfect skin impressions, the armor is perfectly preserved, and they can even see what the Notosaur ate for its last meal. Spoiler, it was seeds. But if the Notosaur had been found somewhere with less strict fossil laws, it's possible that the scientific community would have never learned any of that. It could have gone to some millionaire to end up in their private collection.
No, it's a tough question. If I had my druthers, it'd be like, listen, if you're going to sell this thing anyway, what is the harm in having a museum or a certain research team look at this for a month, take photos, take measurements, especially if it's a one of a kind thing. But again, that's not always the case. That's not the reality in the market. So it's a really tough. Whoop. Okay, I'm back. It's a tough question, And again, I think it really depends on. It's a case by case basis. I guess, yeah. These are things and issues that I grapple with every day that I still try to wrap my head around, because it's very different. Big John, yeah, it's huge, but again, it's a Triceratops, and how many Triceratops are out there already? So that's a different question than if you found an incredibly, well, I was gonna say obscure, but maybe some type of dinosaur that is brand new to science. Where what is the protocol? What is the order of events that ideally transpire in that way? But again, at the end of the day, if you spent the time, money, and effort to extract a dinosaur from wherever you found it, I guess I was gonna say it's yours. Well, it depends on where you find it, whether or not it's yours. Again, man, these are not easy questions. They're not easy answers. First, my gut reaction is that it has overall it has a positive effect, because there's just more people out there looking for the stuff. There's more interest in the content. There's more dollars being poured into finding stuff. Yeah, we could argue whether or not it's ultimately positive or negative, but it's happening. right? It's a reality in the world. Dinosaurs are a gateway drug, apparently not just to science, but to wealth. They potentially could be. And so like people are going to be looking for them. People are going to be finding dinosaurs, and they're going to want to get some money and some notoriety, and hopefully also, help progress the scientific endeavor. And so whatever you can do in whatever capacity, whether you're working in Sotheby's or working in science education, to, I guess, maintain that level of interest, I think is ultimately a good thing. But you're right, like it's happening. At the end of the day, like it doesn't matter whether or not ultimately it's good or bad. It's happening. So how do we then work within the context of this to ideally, again, keep valuing dinosaurs and valuing science and exploration in society, but at the same time, you're right, making sure that this isn't just like a money grab by rich people.
They're likely inextricable ultimately. And storing fossils, collecting, preparing, and storing fossils also costs money. So there is always a budgetary aspect to it. And virtually any science has that issue as well. Funding is always a question and often drives results. And I think one of the philosophical questions that paleontology has to contend with is sort of how those funding, like how that funding and how the science interact, and it's whether or not they can exist cooperatively side by side. And there have been many cases where specimens do end up in a museum and can be studied, but depending on when the scientific community is engaged and how dictates how much data can be successfully or properly documented or lost, and that is can't be redeemed once it's lost. And so it's maybe more a question of sort of how we choose to allow those to interact.
It's tempting to simplify this debate into the scientists in their ivory tower on one side and the money-hungry capitalists on the other. But at least to me, as an external observer and casual dinosaur fan, there's a much larger gray area in the middle of people who are just passionate about science and dinosaurs and prehistory. They just might have different ideas about how we interact with that prehistory.
This guy will be preserved for science.
Him and any other specimen found in this soil will contribute to bettering the human understanding of our world, thanks to Albertan fossil laws. As for the rest of the thousands of bone fragments that litter the ground here, not valuable enough to consume limited research resources, they'll simply weather into dust, as being collected through private funding remains highly disincentivized by those same Albertan fossil laws.
Who's your favorite dinosaur? Where is he? Oh, is that him? Dustin, are you a Grandpasaurus?
No!
I think you are.